Well, welcome to another Accountants Are Sexy Change My Mind. This time we have Leigh Stallard with us from I can't even say it now. Where is my words today? Sitago. Thanks very much. So welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Kelly. It's great to be here. Thanks so much.
I'm just going to ask you to repeat the comment that you put on LinkedIn earlier.
So I think it was something along the lines of like, this podcast is almost like the diary of a CEO for the accounting profession. And I was super nervous about being on it. So the list of people that have been on here are enormous. So privileged.
And that one quote is going to be like in the bulk of my marketing from now on. What a great expression. So thank you for that. But more importantly, thank you for joining me. Now, we've been connected for a while, and my introduction to you, as I've just said to you off screen, was actually seeing your friendly face at Accountex North last year, and it was really nice to see. So it's nice to be able to speak to you in person today, because I think it's been a long time coming, really.
Yeah, so I've been aware of the work that you've been doing for a while, and it was great to be able to finally meet you at Accountex North, and yeah, it's just nice to connect, isn't it? There's so many people doing great work in the space, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts at the moment. I think every second day there's another podcast coming up. I think it's true though, isn't it? You know, and I think people are doing some really interesting stuff, and it's not just about these relationships on social media. I think the industry is taking it a lot further, and it's really exciting, really exciting. And you don't see that in many other industries, by the way. So, but would you do me a favour? Give me an introduction as to who you are and what it is you do for Sitago.
Okay.
So
I am head of accounting partnerships for Sitago. So what I try to do is look after our team of account managers, make sure they've got everything they need to just give a great experience to the accounting firms that we work with. So most people will be familiar with the model, right? We partner with accountants, then work with them to bring our solution to their clients. And so we try and do that as best we can, and in a way that's as valuable as it can be for the firm and also for the clients. But a big emphasis for me is on implementation. And that's a big thing we're going to be working on this year, is looking at not only how do we sell the products really into and use that as a sort of a growth channel, but how do we then help the firm realize the benefit of that. I think in a lot of cases, people tend to look at tech as little Lego bricks. They go, well, I'll take this brick out and I'll put a different brick in. But in reality, and what I've learned from my time around in the work that I've done, is it's never really that simple.
Yeah.
Bits interact with each other, and if you take one bit out and put something else in, it's difficult. And it was typified with an example back when I was at Xero, and it was in the early days, like 2012-ish. And we'd be talking to people about how you can have a bank feed rather than typing statements in and stuff like that. And the answer we'd always get, and it's a little bit inside baseball, so forgive me if you don't get the reference, but it's like, well, does F6 still work? And in F6, Sage, when you're typing stuff in manually, F6, you just copy the line above. But you don't need that because it's all important, and it's getting through those sort of mindsets. But the answer was always, well, if you use it properly, you don't need that stuff, right? And so it's difficult to, I think, get people to think differently about these sorts of products.
Tech has been like a massive explosion, and you feel like you're at the you've got to be like at the end of it, so everyone should be on board, but I don't think we're anywhere close, really. I think there is a lot of talk about it, but I think there are a lot of people that haven't yet adopted a real kind of technology-driven approach to their services.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was an interesting chat with, I think it was Will Farnell, possibly at Accountex North.
He's on my list of guests, by the way. I will hunt him down.
Will's great. He's great value, great insights. But they did a bit of a straw poll at the event. It was probably Accountex London, actually. And I think they found like 25% of people have got more than half their clients online, or it was a really, really small number. And so I guess it goes back to that same point that you can buy the tech and you can become a gold, silver, platinum partner, whatever. But if you've not actually implemented it and then connected it to the other bits of process, then actually, you still got some way to go. So it's really interesting, and it's super interesting time, I think.
So what in this age then? So we've started to adopt technology. We haven't yet fully got this into all of the practices. What objections are you coming up against at the moment? What's doing the accountant's head in when it comes to adopting technology?
I think it's always time. That always is this the sort of perennial excuse for things, right?
That's the same objection that I get.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I've thought about it a little bit, and this next thing might get me some angry comments on LinkedIn, so I'll apologise ahead of time. And I've learned, there's no sweeping generalisations, right? But in very small boutique entrepreneurial firms, you've got an entrepreneurial head, and we know those, like the Zero Award winners and stuff like that, right? They'll cover marketing, they'll cover all these different things, they'll think about tech and process and all that sort of stuff. Fine. In the much larger firms where they've got bigger teams, they'll have like a head of marketing, head of tech, head of digital, and it's covered. But there's this gap in the middle, specifically with traditional firms where everybody that's got to partner level is an accountant and they've got promoted up. So you've effectively got a board of CFOs. And so what happens is one of them, probably with the most followers on LinkedIn or Twitter, they're like, well, you can handle marketing then, because you sort of know a bit about that. And so what they're trying to do is juggle this sort of responsibility that they've got for this function within a business with managing their own portfolio. And so because you don't have that dedicated focus on these things, it gets lost a little bit. And that's why you end up with people go, I haven't got time because I've got to get this done for a client. And so that, not all cases, a lot, and it contributes to that issue, I think.
Yeah, I've seen this in firms of lawyers, the law firms as well. So the partners at the top have all got their specialisms. You know, there might be one in property, there might be one in commercial law, and then all of a sudden they get responsibilities for other bits. But actually, their focus isn't on the business; it's in the business. So they never really got to adopt the systems they need to adopt because it just simply wasn't important. I think there's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of parallels actually with law firms and accountants. But I have always said that accountants can make a decision faster. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I've never really dealt that much with lawyers other than moving houses, and that probably wasn't the speediest example of how lawyers can work. So so I'll defer to you on that one.
Yeah. Well, I can say categorically say I'm right. Once again, angry voices on LinkedIn, maybe. So if time is the objection, how do you help and support and help them understand the value of the software? Because I've looked at implementations for accountants before, and I think we said off air and not on air that they take this technology, they half implement it, and then it doesn't go quite well, and then they're stuck, and then they've got a headache. So what do you do to stop that from happening?
So it, like a lot of things, the cause is always upstream from the symptoms of the problem, right? And so once you're sat there with 100 subscriptions and you're then trying to figure out what do we do with this, well, the problem could have been solved earlier, right? And so what tends to go wrong is that someone in a firm will decide, well, we've got a client that needs this thing. In our case, maybe they're getting paid late, cash flow's bad, so we need to go and find a solution for it. Great. Or it could be anything else, any other type of problem. They'll go and find that and then run with it for a bit, and then a deal will come along and they'll go, well, actually, you know, account manager rings up and says, look, we got a fantastic deal. Take 100 of these, you'll get them half price, happy days. And they'll go for it, or there'll be some other catalyst that makes it happen. But the challenge then is that when people go through change, they go through the Kubler-Ross change curve. Do you know the grief curve, the stages of grief? So
stages of grief, yeah.
So surprise, anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. And so what happens is the person that's in control goes through that quite quickly because they've got a measure of control, but they've already accepted it because the deal's there, or they're under pressure, they get it done. Then they go and drop that on someone else's desk, forgetting that they also need to go through that process. And so you end up with it being squashed and pressured, and that's why you get resistance from the staff that then actually need to deliver it. And that causes a lot of these things to get derailed. And because it hasn't got the time or the the kind of support system around it to make sure this project happens, it can then fall by the wayside or end up being half done. So that I think is a root cause of a lot of what this happens. And so the answer to that is that if you're going to take something on, what is the reason for that? Like, strategically, where does it fit, and what are you trying to achieve? So, and you probably see this with kind of marketing. Like I saw this in the past with Xero. You'd kind of go in and put a capability in a practice because they want a differentiator. They go, right, okay, we want to be online. Probably more so like 10 years or so ago. We want to be online with different. But you're not bringing in the marketing people and telling them why that means they're different, how they can then go and market it. So then they're racing to catch up at the end of it. So it's stepping back at the beginning, thinking, right, who does this affect? And they need to be at the table when we're planning the project, and then it will go much more smoothly.
It's almost like bringing in technology. They think, right, this is going to help my clients, but I'm not going to tell any of my staff how it's going to help them, or why we're going to go through this change, because all change is met with resistance, especially surely in the accounting space, where most accountants are trained to be a bit like hesitant.
So it's an interesting point. And so that's what a lot of people fall back to. They go, oh, people just don't like change. Not really true, right? People move house, they get married, they have kids, they take up sports. People change all the time for stuff, but it's got to be for the right reason. And even in the accounting profession, obviously it's often quite process driven because you want a consistent result. When you look at things like auto enrollment, MTD for VAT, even going a little bit further back in like kind of money laundering regulations and stuff like that, the profession is showing that it's really adept at changing and adapting to those things. What's missing though is the burning platform. So what I mean by that is if you've got a compliance regulation, so money laundering, for example, you have to do that. And if you don't, one of your partners is going to get fined or go to jail, right? So you've got a really strong reason to move, and complacency isn't an option. Same with MTD for VAT and other things. And that is what catalyzes that change, because you've got that burning platform you've got to get off. With tech adoption, you don't necessarily have that because you're stretching for something new and an opportunity. It's not like you've got a pain that you've got to get away from. Or if you do, you need to make sure you communicate that properly. And that can be a really a big cause of these things just never really getting off the ground to begin with.
That's interesting. So I think I see the similarities between tech adoption and marketing. It's my belief that everybody is a marketer. Everyone in your business is a part of your brand and communicating something to somebody about your business. But like the tech adoption, the stories don't necessarily reach the people they need to reach. So they're left on their own devices to try and muddle through the best they can. And if I look back even further in my history and going back to my sales days, this is kind of similar to everybody using their CRM in a different way. Because nobody got told what the process is. Nobody got told why things should be done the way they should be done. So therefore, everybody had their own systems, you know? And I think it's down to communication again, isn't it? Everything 100%. Is communication.
100%. And also, I know when you were talking to Jordan, you were talking about the idea of ownership. Like someone's got to own this rather than just go, well, logically, it's a good idea, so therefore everybody should just do it. Okay, in logic world, it makes sense, but we don't live there. We live in the real world, and someone has to really grab that by the scruff of the neck and go, right, this is my project. This is why we're doing it. This is what will happen if it doesn't succeed. So the burning platform, and these are the steps we're going to go through, and here's what people are accountable for. And again, that comes back to that same point of ownership, having time to invest in it, having a strategically important purpose that justifies the time that you're going to put into making it happen, and then effectively communicating that to everybody in the business.
So when you walk into a business and then help them with this, who's the person that typically takes responsibility? Is it the chief, or is it another person in the business, or could it be another person in the business?
So from Satago's perspective, it'll vary because people will be at different points in the journey, right? You might just have a client manager that says, look, I've got a client, can you help? And that's kind of fine. If you're looking more at practice-wide transformation, or let's say, again, to use our kind of domain, like we see firms starting to build out separate services, like credit control as a service, right? And they'll use the product to deliver that. That's obviously a much, much bigger change, and it requires more people to be involved. And so really at that sort of significance of change, you kind of need the board and probably the MD to be visibly sponsoring it, right? The biggest reason change fails is because there's like a lack of visible sponsorship. But if you know that like the biggest boss of all the bosses is behind this, as an individual contributor, this little place for you to hide, right? You can't go, well, actually, it doesn't affect our department. So having that visible sponsorship is really important. So I'd say for that big scale stuff, yeah, you need those top level people to be visibly supporting what's going on.
And this is going back to your Xero days, which you've been in the accounting space 20 years. Is that right?
Yeah. So 10 in practice, and then in 2012 I switched across to Xero and started like kind of joined the early UK team there.
Yeah, which is exciting in itself, because that was an explosion. So is this kind of mirroring your experience of when Xero came into the world, into the space?
Yeah. So I kind of joined there as, I think, one of the first internal salespeople, and it was kind of welcoming accountants on, getting them started. And we found that we got really, really effective at kind of selling the dream and getting people bought into it, and firms are really excited about it, as you know, it was seen with the growth. But over time, it sort of dawned on me that people aren't necessarily using this to the best of their ability, and so that led me to start looking into things like change management and why aren't people adopting it? Like logically, again, it makes sense. Why wouldn't you roll this out, or why wouldn't you get the best out of it? And it comes down to people, right, and what they're comfortable with, and moving away from that and that kind of stepping into that uncertainty is really difficult for people. And if you haven't paved the way as a leader in a firm for that and told people what to expect and how it's going to work, then you're really lucky in a practice, because you tend to have lots of smart people in the building, which is good in 99% of cases. But in the 1% of cases, if they want to derail stuff, they're really good at doing that and not getting found out. So you've got to make sure you're sort of paving the way properly.
So with your, I'm quite interested in how Xero came about, because it was one of the first kind of technologies in the industry to make such a big dent. And from a marketing perspective, people still today use it as their positioning. And it has made a massive impact on people's lives. But the journey that people were going on initially, and I remember my accountant being super excited about it. Everyone had to be on Xero. Yeah. But I'm not quite sure they really fundamentally understood why.
Yeah.
It was the next big thing. It was sold to them. It was a dream, but they didn't really understand why. So what was your experience with that, like going back 12 years? And is that any different to what it is today, do you think?
It is. So this, you kind of think about the adopters curve, right? And you'd get the early adopters, the innovators, or it was the wow company and valued accountancy and people like them.
Yeah.
That really saw.
And they do exist in the accounting community, which is
100%. And that's the challenging thing. Like, you obviously, the title of the podcast, there's some really innovative and really dynamic firms there. It's not often what people accuse them of being is dry and dusty. It's anything but. You only have to go to an after party after XeroCon or whatnot to see that. But obviously,
I promised Jordan that I would DJ at the next one.
Oh, amazing! No. Oh, that sounds brilliant.
We'll see.
so there are definitely cohorts of firms that say, right, here's a tool, here's something we want to do. We'll pair the two off and we'll go with it. And then you start finding that there becomes a buzz around it, and you've got to do this, and it's great, and there's the opportunity and the benefits and all that sort of stuff. And then others get swept up in that as well. And what we did a great job of at Xero is taking that momentum and showing, great, okay, you want to do it. Let's look at why you want to do it. And it's not just kind of capitalizing that and going, great, you're on for it. Let's take your money and off you go. That momentum got them to the door, and then we took them on a journey. And I think what Xero did really, really, really well is, obviously the product was amazing, right? It was a really, really good piece of software. It opened the door to what firms wanted to do and had been told to do for so long, which is just be proactive. But it's infuriating. Like back when I was in practice, you constantly be told, be proactive. I haven't got the record, so I can't do anything. They won't drop them off. So what can I do? As soon as you've got that in the cloud, it opens the door to do that. So it opened up a whole world of opportunity. And I think the way that the brand was presented was just so refreshing as well. No one talked about accounting software as being sexy and beautiful, and and all that sort of stuff. So it was that combination of things.
Obviously.
So it was that combination of things, and I mean, I could go on all day. Like the leadership at Xero was just incredible. We lived the values, and all that sort of stuff, and people would buy into that because it was much bigger than the product itself. It was the story and the journey and what we were doing and all that sort of thing. And then you do get some people that get swept up in that, and they're like, well, we've got to do this, but we haven't really taken the time to step back and go, well, what does that mean for us as a firm? Why do we do it?
Yeah.
And what I always try to
get caught up in the hype and the marketing and the kind of got to be comparing themselves to their competitors. So if they're doing it, we have to do it, that kind of thing. But once again,
a little bit. What I always try to coach my firms to do was say, well, look, like it might be a differentiator now, but it won't always be. But how do you use these capabilities to build on your existing USPs? Like, okay, great, we can exchange information online seamlessly with clients, but what does that mean for you and what you're really good at? How does that enhance those things rather than just leaning on, well, we can do it in the cloud and that's great? Because that, again, like you've pointed out, doesn't last forever, right? And now it's not really that much of a differentiator anymore. And so I'd hope someone would have picked your accountant up there and sort of taken them through that process to sort of make it their own, you know?
Yeah. The process of onboarding an accountant with their software journey and helping them onboard that and making sure that the communication is right. What comparisons could you or do you draw on when the accountants are actually dealing with their clients in their services?
Well, I think that's another area that Xero really nailed it. And again, what we try to do at Sotago is make sure there's benefit for the accountant and benefit for the client. And then, because like accountants almost always just want to help their clients, and that's the main thing, right? But if it's going to add an extra 5 hours to their week to do that, then you get the friction. So it has to work for both. But then I think where it sort of crosses over with kind of marketing is it's kind of building out that story and saying, right, well, why is this useful to you as a client? And then as a tech vendor, I think it's important for us to furnish the accountant with the resources, the tools, and help them give voice to that story and what it means. And again, like link that back to what is the differentiator for the practice.
I think one of the things that I see people doing is they do the learning, and they'll go through the process of getting whatever systems is in their business. It could be technology, it could be marketing, but they forget about onboarding their clients in a way. So they don't bring them with them, and they think that because they've bought Xero and because they understand Xero, that explaining how Xero works to their clients is like, they kind of assume that because they've done the learning that their clients have also done the learning. And that's a missed opportunity, because we don't know. And I say we because I'm not an accountant. So we as business owners don't know about what you do with Xero or why it's good, or any other software, because this is not just about Xero, bless them. We don't know what the benefit is. So what should the accountant be doing to talk about the benefit to their clients? Do you have any words to say about that?
Yeah, so firms will usually understand their clients really well, and where we saw mistakes was in the scenario you've described there, Kelly, which is like, we've got this software, it's really good, you should use it, it's brilliant, here you go. What I think you've got to do is link that back to real world problems that clients have and what they worry about day to day. Because really, as a client, do you care about bank fees? Probably not. Often you'll drop the bank fee to the accountant and they deal with it anyway. So actually they're solving their own problem there. So why would I pay for that? So with things like Sotago, you wouldn't talk about, well, it's automated invoice chasing and it's credit search and stuff like that. It's just, it would be more a conversation. Say, hey, look, we've looked at your debtor days and it looks like it's taking you about a month to get paid overdue. Like if we could help you shrink that down to 15 days, this is what, like, you'd have an extra $5,000 in your bank account. Like, can we talk about that? And it brings it back around to the real stuff that's going on, because again, correct me if I'm wrong, you're probably not worried about your VAT return or your accounts. You're worried about, is the business growing? Are clients happy? if you've got staff who make payroll at the end of the month. How
I'll
much
tell you what
cash
I'm
flow
worried about. What do I need to do? And what do I need to do? What do you need from me? And I think that's the thing that I'm worried about more than anything else when it comes to my accounts.
What, in terms of compliance, or in
No,
terms
in
of what
terms
you
of
need to do to drive growth?
responsibility, just my responsibility. So we can have whatever technology you want to implement to help me see the get more visibility on my business. What do I need to do? Because I don't want to necessarily go and do the learning. And I think people miss that. People are like, here is the technology, off you go. You know, but then I've got to do loads of work.
As a question then, thinking as a sort of tech vendor of what I could do with that, would you rather see that coming from the accountant, as in like, hey Kelly, here's what you need to do, and they've got branded videos or whatever, or if they passed on content from the tech provider or the vendor? So let's say they were saying, right, we're going to set you with Satago because of X, Y, and Z. Here's some content from Satago to tell you how to use it. Would that land the same way, or is it better if it's come from the accountant in your view?
Oh, that's a good question. And I guess I'm sitting on the fence. It would depend on the software and how relevant, how relevant that information is. But generally, getting set up on a piece of software, it would be fine if it came from the company. I worked with FreshPay for a while, and having videos from FreshPay that you were able to send to your clients would have been an absolute dream. Absolute dream to help them get onboarded, because the process is typically going to be the same again and again and again. So I don't think it matters as long as it's shown that they understand me. And I don't believe that accountants take the time to really understand their clients. And I see that. They don't even know who their clients are a lot of the time. So it's about making sure that sorry, hold on, let me reverse that. It's about making sure that the accountant shows and demonstrates that they understand me. That, for me, is sexy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so if I was a firm, what would that look like? Would that be taking the time to get you in, ask questions, understand the business, having that face-to-face time? Would it be, hey, look, we've noticed this going on in your business. Here's some stuff that might help. Or like, how would you like to see that delivered?
Yeah, well, once again, I think it's interesting. Onboarding is fascinating by the way. From a marketing perspective, I think it's make or break relationship time. And I'm definitely, if you get it wrong, you will lose your client the following year, and someone will just take them because it feels like they don't care. So for me, it could be a series of emails. It could be check-in points. So just to say, we sent you this email and it had a link to it, but you haven't looked at it. So just wondering whether you need us to walk you through. Those kind of things, they're really proactive. And I guess, once again, from a marketing perspective, the more you niche, the more you're going to understand your client. Too broad a client base, you're going to be all over the place. And I suppose that's one of the things that's going to be hard for this.
It's a really topical point as well, because I think I might be butchering this fact. Someone might need to fact check me, but I think I saw that ChatGPT or a similar AI system managed to score 40% on a foundational ACCA exam, which is quite scary if you're in the profession, I would say, because obviously it's going to improve and eventually you'll be able to pass it. So what does that mean for you? There's another couple of accounting apps that are AI based. I think I keep getting retargeted for some reason for an app called Ember, which is completely AI and automated accounting. The advert is, you don't need an accountant to do your accounts, right? And so that it provides a really interesting challenge, I think, to accountants. And so they need to maybe look at the things that you're mentioning there, add that human element and that service component to make sure that they're not overtaken by these automated apps.
Yeah, but it's coming back off the back of your point about being proactive. What does proactive mean? What does it look like? And most of the time, actually, it just means reaching out. Where have you gone, Leigh?
I'm still here. Sorry, my camera's just died. I'm just going to pop a new battery. I am still here. Sorry. But yeah, absolutely. The
I'll
nature of
cover for you. I'll do a dance. Don't worry. But yeah, so it's about going back. It's going back to that point about being proactive. And what does it mean? Thinking it for your customer in advance. That's what it should mean. Thinking about the journey that they're taking, what they're going to need, preempting it, and doing a little bit more to help them on their way. That for me is being proactive. I don't think I don't think practices do it enough. And that's a sweeping generalization. If you are, this is not you. It's for the practices that probably are not actually. They're probably just living day by day.
I think so. I think like time is always time is a challenge, right? Because you've got to churn stuff out. You've got to make sure people aren't getting fined. I think sometimes there's a reluctance to start these conversations because people don't want to be seen as being salesy. They don't want to think that people are trying to sell, like that they're trying to sell things. They're worried that they're going to put the client off. And I think that's a real blocker, sort of mentally for people, because it's scary, right? You don't want to upset people.
Don't upset people, and also some people are scared of work. That came across wrong. Scared of it. They don't want the additional work. They don't know where it's going to lead. And it's the uncertainty of what kind of worms is it going to open up if I start talking about this? Where is it going to lead? And all of a sudden your profitability's gone down because you spent this ton of time. Or has it? Or does that customer value you more and refer you to more people? I don't know.
Well, so yes, but it's always been this dynamic, right? And accountants are probably sick of it now, but like, you've got to do advisory. Compliance is dying, which is obviously nonsense. It's not going to die. But always been told that they've got to do that. And I think a real challenge for that is that if you're looking at a set of statutory accounts or a VAT return, you can build a process document for that largely, and you can repeat that process, and you're always going to get the same thing out the other end because you need consistency from it, right? As soon as you sit down with a business like you and go, okay, look, tell me about the business. Where are you going? What is the plan for exit? Where do you see this going? What are the challenges? You open yourself up to an entire world of uncertainty, and you don't know what you're going to get back as an answer. And there may not always be a process or a way to deal with it. And so if you're used to working and following processes and stuff like that, to suddenly then open that up and you can get any answer back, that can be quite intimidating. Especially if you then look at starting to build more bespoke services. So what does coaching look like for an accounting firm? Feels like an obvious thing to be doing, right? Performance coaching, you've got the numbers there, you understand business, you can probably do really well at that. But what's the process for it? How do you guarantee success? That's really, really challenging. And I think that's another reason why people resist that a little bit.
Funnily enough, this is the work that I'm doing with my collective members at the moment. We're looking at the transformation because unknowingly to anybody, that's what they buy. They buy the transformation that product or services delivers. Even if it's something like a pair of trainers, they're not buying a pair of trainers, they're buying the feeling they get from wearing those trainers. It's the transformation. So I want to, I'm feeling a bit like rubbish about myself. I put these new kicks on and all of a sudden I'm like, woo, yeah, this is a brilliant day because I'm walking down in my brand new trainers. That's the feeling that you get. So what's the transformation that you're delivering for your clients? And if you can nail that, and if you can, most importantly, explain it, that's what people are going to buy from you.
Yeah, 100%. It's like we said earlier on, you don't care about a bank fee. You care about the peace of mind that you get that this is done, right? And you haven't got to worry about it.
Yeah. You've also got the sausage and the scissor explanation, but I don't like that one. Right. So we've already done half an hour, and there's loads of stuff we can talk about, and I only actually feel like the conversation's just got flowing because we've got so much that could cover. But we do have to wrap up. So there's two things I'm going to say to you right now. One is that a Big Lebowski picture in the back.
I love the bit. I've got the dude just, where is he? Just there as well. That's
very good. So I shouldn't say our wedding celebrants, they belong to the Church of the Big Lebowski.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Church of the Latter-day Dude, actually. Nice. And that's who gave us away, wearing dressing gowns. So
that's brilliant.
It's nice to see that in the background. And the second thing is, what is the sexiest thing about accountants?
So, not to get too mushy, but I do think that back when I was at Xero, Rod, who was the founder, he always talked about better schools and hospitals. That's the purpose of what we were doing, because small businesses made up such a large part of the GDP and the economy and employers and stuff like that. Small businesses succeed, more tax gets paid because they can't dodge it like Amazon, unfortunately. More people get employed, more tax, better schools and hospitals for everybody, right? So that was the sort of purpose. And if that's true, that the accountants and bookkeepers are like the Obi-Wan Kenobi to the Luke Skywalker. They're the guides to get people there. And I think it is so important, and especially when we've come through things like the pandemic and 2008 crash and what's coming up, they're such an important steward for that vibrant small business economy, which we're really reliant on, right? Like we need, like small businesses drop off, we've got a major economic, well, we already have, right? But we have a major issue. And so I think they're such a key component to everybody's lives in that way. When you connect those dots in that fashion, that's what makes them sexy to me.
That is a brilliant analogy. I'm all for Star Wars. That is a brilliant analogy. I'm not quick enough today in my mind to come up with a joke, but something about Padawans was there, and then it's gone again. So I'm going to come back to you.
Definitely. Well, we'll go for that joke. We'll open part 2 maybe with that joke if you have me back. We can start there.
Of course I will. I'm having a bit of a brain fog day, so please excuse me. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been great. So make sure you come back and talk to me more. Change transformation, big issue within the accounting industry. Technology adoption, big issue in the accounting industry. And understanding the impact of all of that on your staff, on your customers, on the world, even the world around you. That impact is huge. So the way that you've described why they're sexy, I think is beautiful. And thanks very much.
And keep doing great work, guys.